If you follow heavyweight boxing the way people track every move inside a royal palace, you know there's one name everyone keeps circling in red ink right now: Moses Itauma. At just 21, he's being talked about like the heir apparent to the heavyweight throne, a young, ruthless finisher who's flattening opponents so fast it barely gives the commentators time to get his name out. But just as his star is exploding, another name has pushed its way into the conversation, not as the next chosen one, but as the man who might be able to slam the brakes on this coronation. Promoter Shalom says he's got the heavyweight who can beat Moses Itauma, and he's not talking about some aging ex-champion or a padded record pretender. He's pointing straight at Martin Bakole. Before we get into that, it's worth stepping back and looking at where Itauma actually is in his journey, because the hype isn't made up. Moses only just turned 21 and already has people in and around the sport talking about him like he's the most dangerous young heavyweight on the planet. He's not just winning, he's dismantling people. 13 professional opponents in, and he has run through them with scary efficiency. His most recent win turned more heads than any of his early fights, a brutal first-round knockout of Dillian Whyte. Whyte isn't a prospect or a fringe opponent. He's a veteran with real credentials who shared a ring with the likes of Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury. For a 21-year-old to wipe him out inside one round sent a very clear message. Moses isn't just promising, he's already a serious problem. That momentum was supposed to roll straight into his next assignment. Itauma was lined up to face Jermaine Franklin on January 24th. Franklin is one of those fighters hardcore fans respect. Durable, experienced, not easily bullied. His losses have come to big names like Joshua and Whyte, and even then he heard the final bell. Nobody has ever stopped him. For Itauma, that was the appeal. Beating Franklin decisively, maybe even becoming the first man to finish him, would have been another powerful statement. Instead, reality intervened. In camp for that Franklin fight, Itauma picked up an injury. It was serious enough that the bout had to be pushed back. Now, instead of next week, the Chatham-born heavyweight will step in with Franklin on March 28th. The opponent hasn't changed, the stakes haven't changed, but the timeline has. And that extra time on the calendar is where names like Martin Bakole have crept back into the spotlight. Because while Itauma rehabs and prepares for Franklin, Shalom has made it very clear he believes he's been sitting on a heavyweight who could give Moses a much rougher night than anything Jermaine Franklin can offer. Shalom, the head of Boxer, has been talking openly about how frustrating the last few months have been from his perspective. He says that toward the end of last year, there were real discussions about making a fight between Bakole and Itauma. It wasn't just a fantasy match being thrown around on social media. In his view, that fight was possible. And then, for reasons he doesn't go into detail, it slipped away. You can hear the irritation when he talks about it. From his point of view, Martin Bakole has been willing to take difficult fights. He reminds anyone listening that they matched Bakole with Joseph Parker on just 2 days' notice back in February. Bakole stepped on the scales at an eye-popping 310 pounds for that one, and then got taken out in the second round by a locked-in Parker. It was a rough night, no question. But it also showed you what kind of late-notice, high-risk situations he's been willing to walk into. After that came the F.A. Ajagba fight in May. That one went the distance and ended in the controversial draw. A lot of people watching felt Bakole was lucky to escape with anything other than an L on his record. Instead of cementing his status, the result raised more questions about where exactly he sits in the heavyweight hierarchy right now. Since then, silence. No fights, no announcements, just rumors and the occasional mention in interviews like this one, where Shalom lifts the curtain just enough to remind everyone Bakole exists and that in his eyes, he's still incredibly dangerous. He even mentioned that they were offered a fight with Filip Hrgović in August. That's another high-risk, high-reward name in the division. From Shalom's side, the storyline is consistent. Bakole will take anyone, anywhere. The holdup, he hints, hasn't come from his fighter's willingness. It's come from other people in the decision-making chain not greenlighting the opportunities. At the same time, Shalom doesn't sugarcoat the reality that Bakole has not always given himself the best platform to succeed. He admits the 34-year-old hasn't prepared the way he should have for some recent fights. You don't show up at 310 pounds for Joseph Parker on 2 days' notice if your training camp has gone perfectly.
As a heavyweight, you can't afford to treat your preparation like an afterthought and then hope talent will bail you out every time. And yet, despite that inconsistency, Shalom keeps coming back to the same belief. On his best day, properly prepared, he thinks Martin Bakole has the talent to be the best heavyweight in the world, not just good enough to test someone, but good enough to beat anyone, including Moses Itauma. He doesn't mince words about that matchup. He says straight up that he likes the fight for Bakole, not because it's an easy route back into relevance, but because he genuinely thinks Bakole can win it. In his mind, if the version of Martin he sees in the gym turns up under the bright lights, a fight with Moses isn't about protecting a prospect, it's a 50-50 or even better for his man. From a stylistic and narrative standpoint, the idea is irresistible. On one side, you have a 21-year-old on a ruthless knockout run, bouncing from victim to victim, looking like nothing can slow him down. On the other, a 34-year-old Congolese giant who's been through ups and downs, taken late-notice opportunities, ballooned in weight, and still has flashes that make experienced observers think, if he ever gets it all right, look out.
It's the classic question boxing fans love. What happens when an unbeaten, unstoppable-looking rising star is matched with someone who, on his day, might be the hardest assignment he's ever had? From Moses Itauma's perspective, a fight with Martin Bakole in late 2026 or beyond would say a lot about what kind of path he and his team want. He already has Jermaine Franklin in front of him, a very real, very credible test. Franklin has never been stopped despite sharing the ring with Joshua and White. If Itauma can change that, he sends a message to everyone that his power is not just hype against overmatched names. But Franklin, for all his durability, doesn't carry the same wild-card danger that Bakole brings. Bakole is unpredictable. When he's in shape and locked in, he's big, heavy-handed, and hard to move. When he's not, he can be sluggish, off-balance, and vulnerable. Preparing for that kind of fighter is tricky. You don't always know which version will walk through the ropes, but you have to be ready for the best one. For a promoter like Shalom, putting Bakole in with Itauma is about more than just one big night. If Martin pulls off the upset, suddenly Boxer has the man who derailed the most hyped young heavyweight in the division. If he loses competitively, but looks sharp doing it, his stock can still go up after a long layoff. And if he disappears quietly without getting those kinds of chances, then all that unfulfilled potential will always hang over his record like a cloud. The tricky part is timing. Bakole hasn't fought since that draw with Ajagba in May. By the time he gets back into a real training camp and into a scheduled fight, it will have been a significant layoff. Shalom insists they will have news on Bakole soon, hinting that a return is finally close. But soon, in boxing, can stretch. There are broadcast dates, venues, other fights in the mix. It's not as simple as saying we want this fight and making it happen. Meanwhile, Moses Itauma still has to deal with Jermaine Franklin on March 28th. No matter how confident people are in him, Franklin is not the kind of opponent you look past. If Itauma treats that fight like a formality, he could find himself in far deeper waters than expected. And if he doesn't come through it clean, either with a rough decision or, in a worst-case scenario for his camp, a loss, the entire conversation about Bakole versus Itauma shifts. That's why everyone from hardcore fans to casual observers is in a wait-and-see mode right now. Shalom has planted the seed. He's made it known he wanted Bakole versus Itauma before, that it was talked about seriously, and that he hopes to revive it. He's publicly backing his fighter to not only compete with the young phenom, but to beat him. But until Itauma closes the chapter on Jermaine Franklin, and until Bakole actually gets a date and an opponent confirmed for his own comeback, this potential clash lives in the what-if column. If things do fall into place though, if Moses keeps winning, if Bakole returns and looks more like the dangerous version of himself than the 310-pound version who showed up against Parker, the stakes are obvious. For Moses Itauma, a win over someone like Martin Bakole would be another brick in the case that he's not just another flashy prospect, but a future champion who's fought his way through genuinely risky assignments. For Martin Bakole, an upset over Itauma would be career-defining. It would wipe away some of the doubt from the Ajagba draw in the Parker loss and confirm what Ben Shalom keeps saying, that on his night, he belongs right at the top of the division with anyone.
And for the rest of us watching, it would be exactly what heavyweight boxing is supposed to give you. Not just talk about thrones and crowns, but real, dangerous fights where everything can change for both men in a matter of minutes. For now though, it all hangs on those next moves. Moses Itauma has to get to March 28th and take care of Franklin. Martin Bakole has to finally walk back through the ropes and remind people why a major promoter still talks about him like a potential best-in-the-world talent. If both things happen and both men deliver, then Ben Shalom's frustration over the fight that got away might turn into something else. The satisfaction of knowing he helped line up the kind of generational test that can make or break a rising star's bid for the heavyweight crown.